Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm really excited to be here today because we're looking at something that is, I think, arguably one of the most common yet almost invisible
Yeah.
objects in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
It is something I guarantee every single person listening
Yep.
has held in their hands at some point. You've probably, tucked one into a suit jacket pocket.
Sure. Or pressed it between the pages of a book.
Exactly. Pressed it between the pages of Family Bible or shoved it into a purse along with, a pack of tissues. But rarely, if ever, do we actually stop and analyze what it is we are holding.
We don't.
We are talking, of course, about the funeral program.
It's such a fascinating subject. It really is. It's one of those ubiquitous items that sits right at this strange intersection of history, graphic design, and really profound emotional psychology.
Right.
We tend to look past it to focus on the service itself, but the object tells a massive story all on its own.
It really does. And before we get into the weeds, I want to set the stage properly here. We are exploring this topic today with research and insights provided by the Funeral Channel Network, which is brought to you by the Funeral Program site.
Yes.
And I want to flag that specifically because as we dug into the research, it became so clear that this isn't just a company that, sells paper.
Yeah.
They are absolute titans in this very specific niche.
That context is actually really important for the listener to understand. It is. We aren't just looking at, generic data from anywhere. We are looking at insights from a group that has been navigating this space for over 30 years.
Over 30 years.
It's been around basically since the dawn of the public internet.
Which is just wild to think about. That means they were helping people design these tributes when most of us were still figuring out how to use dial-up modems.
Yeah, Netscape Navigator, yeah.
Exactly.
So when you have 3 decades of history in such a specific industry, you aren't just observing trends, you are actively defining them. You really are. They've seen the shift from, physical cut and paste to the digital age. And that perspective is what really frames our entire discussion today.
Okay, so here is our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We want to take this piece of paper, which, let's be honest, it usually just looks like a simple brochure or a flyer, and we want to reveal why it is, actually. It's a complex historical document.
Right. It's an emotional anchor.
An emotional anchor. A design challenge. It is so much more than just a list of songs and speakers.
I think that's the perfect way to frame it. Because if you just look at it on the surface, the initial impression is purely functional. It's an itinerary. It's a schedule.
It's the who, what, when, where.
Yeah, that's it. And if that were all it was, we would just, write it on a whiteboard at the front of the chapel.
Or send a group text message, right?
Yeah.
Service starts at 10.
Exactly. But we don't do that. We print them on quality paper. We obsess over font choices. We select these very specific photos. That behavior tells us that there are these invisible roles this document is playing. It's doing heavy lifting that we just don't explicitly talk about.
Invisible roles.
Yeah.
I love that phrasing. Okay, let's unpack that. When I'm sitting in a pew and I'm holding this document, what is it actually doing for me?
Well, based on the research we've come through, particularly from the archives of the Funeral Program site, there are really 4 main pillars of purpose here. And the first one is actually psychological. It provides structure during chaos.
That resonates with me so much. Think about the mindset you're in when you walk into a funeral. You're sad, maybe you're in shock. It's socially awkward.
So awkward.
You haven't seen some of these cousins in 10 years. Your brain is not firing on all cylinders.
No, it's an emotionally charged environment. It's high stress, high grief, high distraction. And human beings, when they are overwhelmed, they crave predictability. The program acts as a map. Yeah, it tells you, okay, first we are going to sing, then someone will speak, then we will pray, and then it will end.
It just sort of lowers the temperature in the room.
It does.
Yeah.
It absolutely does. It answers the questions you're too polite to ask, like, how long is this going to take? Or do I need to stand up now?
Right.
It's the difference between feeling completely lost in a sea of grief and feeling like you are being guided through a ritual. It provides a sense of control when everything else feels completely out of control.
So, okay, that's the first layer. Structure, a guide. What about the second pillar?
The second is the tribute. And this is where the document shifts from being a map to being a mirror. It reflects the life of the person who died.
Okay, and we're definitely going to get into the distinction between like a standard obituary and a life tribute later on. But you make a great point in the notes here about the difference between the spoken word and the printed word.
That's the key. That's everything. A eulogy is powerful, right? It can move the entire room to tears. that it is spoken into the air and then it dissipates.
It's gone.
It's gone. Unless you're recording it, those words are gone the moment the speaker steps down.
But the program captures the essence. It captures the dates, the relationships, the legacy in a tangible form that you can hold. It essentially documents memories that spoken words just can't preserve in the same way.
It's permanent. It's kind of the difference between having a conversation and reading a book. You can put the book on a shelf and come back to it whenever you want.
Which leads directly into the third pillar, communication. This is the more, logistical side, but it's absolutely crucial. It conveys accurate information, dates, locations, the names of the pallbearers spelled correctly.
Oh, that's a big one.
It's huge. And it ensures that when guests leave, there is zero confusion about what just happened or who was involved.
And finally, the fourth pillar, which I think this is my favorite one, the keepsake.
This is the one that turns the program from a piece of paper into an artifact. I have a shoebox. I think most people have a shoebox, right?
Yeah.
Or a drawer or a specific file folder somewhere. And inside that box, I have programs from funerals of people I loved, some from 20, 25 years ago. Why do we do that? We don't usually keep the menu from a wedding reception,
No, we don't.
but we always keep the funeral program.
We keep it because it becomes a historical record. It's a direct link to future generations. That little piece of paper is a primary source document for your family's history. It's a snapshot of a specific day, a specific life, and the community that surrounded them. If you throw it away, you aren't just tossing paper, you're tossing a piece of the family archives.
That is profound. It's a historical record. I want to put a pin in that because we're absolutely going to talk about the genealogy aspect later, which is super cool. But first, let's look at the object itself. The source material gave us this really simple core definition: a printed or digital piece handed to attendees that outlines the ceremony while honoring the life of the deceased.
Simple, concise, accurate, gets the job done.
It does, but then the source also threw a million different names at us for the same thing. Pamphlet, folder, brochure, obituary
It
program.
can get really confusing, yeah.
It's like, can we just pick one?
Yeah.
But I guess the variety itself speaks to how personal this document is.
It does, and we will break down the nuance of those names in a bit, because pamphlet and brochure actually signal very different things to a designer or a funeral director.
Right.
But I think what's important to grasp right now is that regardless of whether you call it a flyer or a memorial stationery suite, the function is identical. It's always that combination of guide and tribute.
Okay, so we've established the what and the why. Now I want to talk about the when. How did we get here? Because I'm assuming that, in the 1600s, people weren't handing out glossy trifold brochures with high-res photos.
No, they certainly were not at all.
So take us back. What is the evolutionary history of the funeral program?
Well, if we go all the way back to the era of oral tradition, the funeral program, it simply didn't exist. There was no need for it. In those early religious or communal settings, the guide was the person standing at the front.
The shaman, the priest, the village elder.
Correct. The clergy or the leader guided the entire service verbally, and the congregation. They just followed along because they knew the rituals. They had them memorized.
Right. I mean, if you went to church every single Sunday, you knew the drill. You didn't need a piece of paper to tell you when to say amen.
Exactly. Familiarity replaced the need for printed instruction. But then we have the first major technological shift. The printing press meets the church. As printing becomes accessible and affordable, churches start producing these simple orders of service.
I can picture these in my head. Very stark. Very serious looking.
Oh, yeah. Minimalist. Just text. Strictly functional. They were tools to help the congregation sing a specific hymn or recite a specific prayer together. They were not about the person who had died. They were about the liturgy.
So no biography, no photo of the deceased.
Not a chance. It was about the ritual, not the individual.
Wow.
And the shift from functional to commemorative, which is really the birth of the modern program as we know it, that doesn't happen until the mid-20th century.
What changed? What was the catalyst?
Well, culture changed. We started to focus more on the individual narrative, on personal stories. Families began adding names and dates and then these brief life summaries to those old church bulletins.
Ah, so it started as like a little add-on.
It did. It was an enhancement. Then came photographs. Then came the full obituary text. The document literally morphed from here is what we are doing to here is who we are remembering.
And then we hit the big one, the digital revolution.
This is where everything explodes. Desktop publishing, the home printer, and of course, the internet.
And this is where the funeral program site really enters the story as, I mean, almost a protagonist in this industry.
It is, and this part of the research really stood out to me. We're talking about a company that started over 30 years ago. Just think about what the internet was like 30 years ago.
I'm trying to remember. It was all dial-up modems, right? The horrible sound, Netscape Navigator. It was barely even a visual medium.
It was the Wild West. It truly was. And in that landscape, online memorial resources were virtually non-existent. If you lost someone, you went to the funeral home and you took whatever standard cookie-cutter stationery they offered you, you had zero control.
Right. You got the choice of, would you like the sunset background or the praying hands background? That was your choice.
That was it, exactly. The funeral program site saw a massive gap. They entered the market when families were desperate for guidance and for templates, but found the resources were incredibly scarce. They helped define an entire category of online funeral stationery.
It's fascinating to think about that timing. They weren't just building a business. They were building a bridge for people to take control of their own mourning process, in a way.
That's the so what here. That's exactly it. The shift wasn't just about technology, it was about agency. Families suddenly gained the ability to say, no, I want this specific design, this specific font, this specific photo, because resources like the funeral program site finally made it possible.
So we've gone from just oral tradition to these stark church bulletins to fully personalized, digital-ready keepsakes. That's incredible evolution.
Yeah.
Now, I want to circle back to that vocabulary lesson we teased earlier.
Yes.
Because I was looking at the list in our notes. Funeral pamphlet, brochure, flyer, folder, stationery. Why are there so many names? Is it just a regional thing?
It's a mix of regional differences, cultural habits, and specific design choices. And the words matter because they really do set expectations.
Okay, let's run through them. Funeral pamphlet. When I hear pamphlet, I think of something, I don't know, educational, like a medical pamphlet you'd get at the doctor's office.
Right, and that's the connotation. So a funeral pamphlet is usually booklet style, and it emphasizes the informational aspect. It suggests there is something to read inside, something to learn about the person's life.
Okay. What about funeral brochure?
Brochure implies marketing, or a kind of professional polish. When you hear brochure, you think of something folded, maybe glossy, with multiple sections. It suggests a higher level of production value. If you ask a designer for a brochure, they're going to immediately start thinking about paper quality and different types of folds.
Funeral flyer.
A flyer is much simpler. It's usually a single page. It's often used for less formal services or perhaps for a celebration of life that is happening a bit later, or frankly, when the budget and time are very, very limited. It's quick, direct communication. It's not trying to be a book. It's trying to be a notice.
And funeral folder.
That one is very literal. It refers to the physical folding of the paper, a bifold or trifold. You hear this term a lot in church settings. Please take a folder from the usher. It's a very functional, straightforward term.
Okay, and then you have the big umbrella term, funeral stationery.
Right. That covers absolutely everything. The program itself, the prayer cards, the bookmarks, the guest books, it views the program as just one piece of a larger coordinated suite of items. It's the holistic view.
There were two more that I found really interesting because they seem to point to the content inside rather than the physical format. Obituary program and order of service program.
Yes. These tell you what the priority of the document is. An obituary program signals that the focus is heavily on the written life story. It's going to have a long, detailed narrative. An order of service program, on the other hand, is very common in liturgical traditions, Catholic, Anglican, Lutheran. It emphasizes the flow of the worship service. The priority there is the ritual itself, not just the biography.
So, despite all these different names, the takeaway is that they're all trying to do the exact same thing.
Correct. They're all just vessels for memory and for guidance. And a place like the funeral program site, because they've been doing this for 30 years, they cover all of these. They understand that if you ask for a folder and I ask for a brochure, we might want the exact same thing or we might want something totally different. And they have the layouts and templates for all of it.
Which is a perfect segue because I want to mentally open one of these up now. Let's do a little anatomy lesson. If we are looking at the quintessential funeral program, what are we seeing? Let's start with the cover.
The cover is the handshake. It's the very first impression. The standard elements are the person's name, their dates of birth and death, and a photo.
And usually a title, right? In loving memory, celebrating the life of something like that.
Right. And that title actually sets the tone for the entire service. Celebrating the life feels very different than in memoriam. It primes the guest on how they should feel and what to expect.
That's so true. Okay, now we open it up. The interior.
Usually, the first thing you encounter is the order of service. This is that structure pillar we talked about earlier. It lists the musical selections, any readings, prayers, the eulogies.
And this allows the attendees to follow along without any uncertainty. I just can't stress enough how important that is. I've been to services where there was no program, and you're just sitting there the whole time wondering, is this the last song? Are we supposed to stand up now? It's so distracting.
It breaks your focus. It pulls you out of the moment. The program handles all the logistics so you can focus on the emotion.
Okay, then we get to the core of it, the obituary or the life tribute.
This is the heart of the document. This is it. And there is a real divergence in styles here. You have the traditional format, very factual. Born here, worked here, is survived by these people, died here.
The nuts and bolts.
Yes. And then you have the narrative, the storytelling approach.
He loved fishing, and he absolutely hated broccoli kind of details.
Exactly. The human details, the hobbies, the quirks, the personal qualities. This is the section that people read when they get home. This is what makes it a keepsake.
And then there's a section that I always think of as the village section, the acknowledgments.
It's a beautiful part of the anatomy, isn't it? It's where the family has a chance to thank the support system. The clergy, the musicians, the pallbearers, the hospice staff, the friends who brought over food. It's a moment of public gratitude in the midst of all that grief. It reminds everyone that death, while it's personal, is experienced by a whole community.
And often there are extra elements thrown in.
Poems?
Scriptures.
We call that the spirit of the program. These elements reflect the deceased's values. If they were deeply religious, you'll see scripture. If they loved literature, maybe a favorite poem. If they were a humorist, maybe a funny quote. It adds flavor and personality.
And finally, you get to the back panel.
The functional closer, this is where you put the closing thoughts, maybe one last photo, often a more candid, happy one, and the logistical information about the repast or the graveside service. Meet us at the community hall for sandwiches and coffee.
It's amazing how standardized that structure is, yet how unique every single one feels when you're holding it.
That's the design challenge right there. The container is standard, the content is singular.
Speaking of the container, let's talk about the physical format. Because you can't just say, I want a program. You have to choose a shape, a layout.
You do. And the most common, the absolute workhorse of the industry, is the bifold.
That's a single sheet folded in half.
Right. It gives you 4 panels. Front cover, back cover, and 2 inside panels. It balances space and simplicity. It's distinct, it's manageable, and it fits easily in a pocket or a purse. It's the classic choice for a reason.
But sometimes you just have too much to say for a bifold. The story is bigger.
Then you graduate to the trifold. 6 panels. This is for when you have an extended obituary or maybe you want to include a photo collage. Just gives you more real estate to tell the story.
Of the booklet.
The booklet is the heavy hitter. This is multiple pages stapled together in the middle. This is for a very large service or for a life that needs a lot of documentation. It's essentially a small magazine about the deceased, a true keepsake.
And then on the other end of that spectrum, you have the single-page flyer.
The simplest option. It's often used for memorial services where the vibe is a bit lighter, or perhaps for digital distribution where folding isn't a concern.
Digital. The outline mentions that digital programs, sent via email or a QR code at the service, are becoming more common. But, and here's the but, families still overwhelmingly prefer print. Why do you think that is?
It connects right back to what we called the tactile value. There is just something about holding the paper. Scrolling on a phone just doesn't hit the same emotional chord as running your thumb over a printed photograph of someone you loved.
No, it doesn't.
We are physical beings. When we lose a physical person from our lives, we need a physical object to hold on to.
That makes so much sense. It's grounding. So let's say I'm a family member and I'm planning a funeral. I'm standing at this crossroads. Do I DIY this thing? Or do I hire a professional?
That is the big question. It really is. And there are very real pros and cons to both paths.
Okay, let's look at the DIY route first. What's the appeal?
Well, DIY offers flexibility, total control. You can change a comma at 2 o'clock in the morning if you want to. It offers cost control, which can be a major factor. And for some people, the actual act of making it is therapeutic. It's a final act of service. I am making this for my dad.
But, and I feel like this is a big but.
It's a huge but. It requires what the source material called emotional bandwidth and some level of technical skill. If you are deep in grief, do you really want to be fighting with printer margins?
Oh, that sounds like an absolute nightmare. You're already crying and now the printer is jammed and you're out of ink.
Exactly. That's why the professional option exists. It reduces stress. You hand off the content, the text, and the photos, and a designer handles the spacing, the layout, the print specifications, all the technical edits.
And this is where the funeral program site seems to have really cracked the code. They offer this hybrid model.
This is why they are industry leaders. They understand that it's not a binary choice for families. They offer professionally designed templates for the DIRs, so you aren't starting from a blank page, you have a professional foundation. But they also offer full design and print services for those who are just too overwhelmed.
So you can kind of choose your level of involvement. You can say, I want to write all the text, but you guys make it look good.
Exactly. And the expert insight here is that funeral design requires a specific kind of sensitivity. A general design platform, like a Canva or just Microsoft Word, doesn't know funerals. It doesn't understand the balance needed between traditional reverence and modern aesthetics.
That's a good point.
The funeral program site specializes exclusively in memorial stationery. They know the traditions, they know where the landmines are, they've seen it all.
That expertise matters. You definitely don't want to accidentally choose a font that looks like it belongs on a birthday party invitation.
You really, really don't. Context is absolutely everything.
Okay, we're coming into the final stretch here, and I want to go deep. We've covered the what and the how. Now I want to go back to the deeper why.
Let's do it.
We touched on this idea earlier, the program as an emotional anchor. The source text used the word grounding.
Think about the physical sensation of grief. It can feel like you're floating or spinning. It's disassociative. Having a physical object in your hand, that tactile nature, it connects you back to the present moment. It gives you something to look at when you can't look at the casket or when you can't look at the crying family members in the front row.
It's almost like a shield.
In a way, yes, a shield, but it's also a bridge. Post-service, that program bridges the gap between the acute grief of the funeral service itself and the long-term process of memory.
Right, you take it home, you put it on the fridge for a week or two, then maybe it moves to the desk, and then eventually into the shoebox.
And every time you see it, you process the loss a little bit more. You read the obituary again. You notice a detail you missed during the service because you were too upset to focus. It helps you metabolize the reality of the death over time.
And then, years later, it transforms again. It becomes a historical record.
This is the part that fascinates me as a researcher. These programs are primary sources. They truly are.
Explain that for our listeners. Why would a historian 100 years from now care about my grandma's funeral program?
Well, an official death certificate gives you very, very little information. Cause of death, date, maybe the next of kin, that's it. But a funeral program, it lists the cousins. It lists the church they attended their whole life. It lists their favorite hymns, which tells you something about their specific denomination. It lists their hobbies. It might even list the pallbearers, who were likely their closest friends.
It gives you the texture of the life, the community.
Exactly. Genealogists absolutely love funeral programs. They capture cultural practices and family webs that official government records completely, totally miss.
So that means if there's a typo in the program,
it becomes a permanent part of the historical record.
Oh, wow. No pressure to the person proofreading it.
Right. But that's why accuracy is so vital. You aren't just printing a schedule for a Tuesday morning. You are printing a page of history.
It's incredible to think about the adaptability of these documents, too. They work for a traditional Catholic Mass, a secular celebration of life in a park, even a virtual Zoom memorial service.
That's because the core human need is consistent. Whether you are religious or secular, you have a need to honor, a need to remember, and a need to gather. The program facilitates that need, regardless of the specific beliefs or setting.
It creates a shared experience, even for people who aren't in the same room.
Yes. Even in a hybrid service, where half the people are on a laptop at home, if they have the digital PDF of the program, they are looking at the exact same photo as the person sitting in the pew. It unifies the group.
And ultimately, as the source says, the program represents care.
That's the bottom line. When you receive a beautiful, well-thought-out program, it signals that the service was planned with intention. It says, we loved this person enough to get the details right.
It's a final act of love.
It is.
So let's bring this home. We started by saying this was, just a piece of paper. But we've discovered is a guide for the overwhelmed. It's a tribute to a legacy. It's a communication tool. It's a historical archive.
And it's a design object that has evolved from just oral tradition all the way to the digital age.
And again, we really have to tip our hat to the funeral program site. They saw the need for this 30 years ago. They realized that families needed help navigating this really delicate intersection of technology and grief, and they built the infrastructure for it.
They really did. They empowered families to be the authors of their own tributes in a way that just wasn't possible before.
I think what sticks with me the most from this whole deep dive is that idea of the shoebox. The fact that these things outlast the flowers, they outlast the potato salad at the repast, they even outlast our own sharp memories of the day itself.
Memories fade. They do, but ink doesn't, at least not for a very long time. The program is often the only tangible thing that remains from the end of a life.
So here is my final thought for you, the listener. And this is a bit of a provocative question to leave you with.
I love these.
Next time you are holding a funeral program, or maybe even planning one, ask yourself this. Are you just planning a service? Or are you curating the final chapter of a biography?
That is a powerful distinction.
Are you writing the document that a great-grandchild you will never, ever meet is going to hold in their hands one day to understand who this person was?
It changes the way you look at the font choice, doesn't it?
It changes everything. It's not just a flyer. It's the last word.
Beautifully put.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.
Goodbye, everyone.